Hey everybody, and welcome to the live stream, or if you're watching this when it's not live, welcome to the repeat of the live stream. I'm Father Roderick, and you are watching this on the Tridio Media YouTube channel. I used to stream the Mass and also these podcasts on my main YouTube channel over at Father Roderick. But for a number of reasons that I will explain in the show, we have decided to make some changes, which will hopefully make things a lot easier to manage for all of us. So welcome. Glad you're watching. Make sure to introduce yourself in the stream. Even if you're late, never a problem. A wizard is never late. Gandalf is never late. You are never late. We're always happy to have you. And so a regular podcast, but with a couple of announcements at the beginning. So hopefully you will enjoy that. And let us know in the comments, of course, what you think of these changes. Alrighty, here we go. Hey there, and welcome to my weekly show at the beginning of the second half of 2022. Can you imagine that we're already past the halfway point of this year? It's insane. Hey, I've always announced this show as The Weekly Show, but I have an announcement about its title. This episode is made possible thanks to my community of patrons, people that support me with their monthly donations, and they make it possible for us as an organization to reach out, to make new programs, to every once in a while get some new equipment, pay the bills, very important, because of course, as you can imagine, with all these different channels, we have a lot of recurring costs, and we are most of all thankful for all the feedback of that community. It's a very supportive, creative community that helps us make the right choices and helps us discern what to do. And the fruit of that discernment is something I'm going to talk about in a minute, but not before, as I always do at the beginning of the new month, before I welcome the new members of our Patreon community by their names. And Inge always kindly makes a small list of all those new members because, of course, I can't always remember everyone. And some of them are very new, and I am looking forward to making their acquaintance over time. So we have a number of new patrons that started their patronage, is that how you say it, in the month of June. We've got Thomas Kent, Ramon Gosen, Alan T., Kathy Voras, Arlene Allen, Robin Ramsey, and Chris Cassie, and Jill Christensen. Thank you so much for joining the community. I hope you have a wonderful time. And make sure, if you haven't done so already, to also activate your Discord membership. It's automatically linked to your patron membership. If you have any trouble, just ask us for help. It's very easy to install. And through this Discord, you can join the rest of the community and introduce yourself and start the conversation with the rest of the members. I also want to thank specifically Michael Bone and Anne Maravich for upping their tier. So we have different tiers on Patreon, as you know. We've got the $2.50, like very low threshold tier, and then from the $5 tier, you get more perks. And there is a new perk that is coming in the second half of 2022, and that is a flagship show, a podcast that is only available to the patrons and in which I will do deep dives in the meaning of the movies, television series, books, basically all the stories out there. And instead of just adding these little snippets in all the various social media channels that I have, it allows me to focus on one topic, on one book or one movie, and to really go in depth, and also to talk about spoilers, which oftentimes I don't do here on the podcast because, well, not everyone has already seen the TV show or movie that I talk about. Whereas with these specialized shows, it's going to be much easier to give a number of you what you've asked me for, and that is, please give us something where you can talk spoilers, because we've seen the series. We want to hear your opinion. So I'm very happy to be able to offer that for the $5 and more tier, and then you've got subsequent tiers. So if you are currently at the $2.50 tier and you'd love to hear that new show called, by the way, Story Secrets, because that's basically what it is. It's the secrets behind the stories, the deeper layers. Then consider just upping your tier and moving from the $2.50 to the $5 tier, if, of course, that is possible for you. I'm really looking forward to start this new endeavor for our patrons. And then we have some returning patrons. So every once in a while, people will have to stop their patronage, their monthly donations, for multiple reasons. And sometimes when things change, they return. And so I want to welcome back Chris Perno. And, that's tiny letters here on my screen. Old Gioi Onoi. I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, and Pedro Chavez. Thank you so much for returning. Welcome back to the community, and thank you so much for your ongoing support.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
So, what about those announcements? What's the big news of this second half of 2022? Now, if you follow my episodes of The Walk, and especially if you're a patron and you listen to The Extra Mile, which is one of the podcasts that we post to the patrons, you have heard me develop ideas on how to manage these different channels, and more importantly, how to help the various audiences that we have, the best, how to provide people what they're actually asking us. And that is one of the most important things that we feel we have to do over at Tridio Media, is to make sure that what we do corresponds to an actual question. There's a lot of one-way communication going on in the world and also in the church, but the best way to make sure that you're actually useful and that people want to listen to you and want to join your mission is if what you offer corresponds to what people need. So we've talked about this a lot. Inge and I are always weekly talking about this, sometimes also talking with you, the community, during our weekly community hour when we record the To The Max podcast. But also with our board, our supervisory board. As you know, Tridio is not just Inge and me. It's also a board that used to be the board of the organization. We're a nonprofit organization, but things have changed for legal reasons in the Netherlands, and so we now have a supervisory board, and then there's me, who is the CEO of of Tridio, but the supervisory board is very important in protecting, and this is very important, the overall mission of what we do. Make sure that we that what we do corresponds to the mission that we've defined ourselves. And what is that mission? It's very simple. Remember that wonderful story that we read in the Gospels about, this happens after the resurrection, about these two disciples of Jesus, former disciples, because the last thing they heard of him was that he died and he was crucified. And so they feel lost. They walk away from Jerusalem. They are on the road, but they don't know where they're going. And they're kind of reminiscing. And then someone joins them. We know that it's Jesus, but they don't know yet. And he listens to them. And so they share with him everything that has happened. And then he joins the conversation and he starts to explain, everything was supposed to happen like this. And still they don't recognize him. And then they arrive at this village called Emmaus, and they tell him to maybe come with them because it's already getting dark and they're going to have a meal together. And that's what they do. And then during the meal, Jesus takes the bread and breaks it and gives it to them. And that's when they recognize him. That's when they're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, he is here with us. And then later on, when Jesus has departed, they share amongst each other. Didn't our hearts burn? He was right there. And for us, that story is the defining biblical text of our mission. That is what we want to do. We want to journey with our listeners and with our viewers, with you, with the community. We are not there at the end of the road, kind of shouting at you, come over here. Nor are we lagging behind and just looking at how you live your life, observing, and sometimes just like doing one-way communication, like here, this is what we made for you. No, this is all about a journey. And it's a journey that involves you in your journey of life and your journey of faith. And at the same time, it's also our journey. We as content makers are also on a journey. We also learn. If there's one thing that I share with you all the time in whatever I do is what I discover, what I've learned, and then I pass it on to you. And sometimes that will help you, and sometimes you're like, well, you know what, that's not really my cup of tea, or it's not applicable. And sometimes it joins people years later. I often have that when people all of a sudden out of the blue send me an email and they say, hey, I found this video or this podcast recording from years ago, and wow, it was exactly what I needed to hear. So the whole idea that we have is whatever we do, the purpose is that it helps you along the way. And what we make is made in conjunction with you. That is why this patron community is so important for us, because it's a literally our fellowship. We walk together. It's not just our mission. It's a mission that we carry together. And the community itself has also a role in welcoming new members and also sharing what they have to share. And so this back and forth, this journeying, this walking together is essential to what we do. And so with that in mind, we have decided to make some changes in the way we present the content to you, and also what we do and what we're no longer going to do. Now, don't worry, everything you like, everything that you're currently listening to and following, none of that is going to disappear. None of that is going to change, but we're going to bring more focus to it. So first of all, you know that I've always used this one YouTube channel for all my streams. I would post my reviews, my Star Wars videos, reaction videos, all that on that channel. But I also used it to stream the online mass, the Mass for Geeks, each Sunday, which is a very different thing. It's related because, you know, I'm a geek, and during that Mass in the homily, I also use a lot of examples from the world of geeks to explain the gospel. But it's still a very, very different thing than than the rest of that channel. Now, we've decided to bring that stream over to this Tridio Media channel. That's a YouTube channel that we've used in the past also for live streams. And then after a while, we started to develop the Father Roderick brand. That sounds a bit weird, but we wanted to make our offerings a bit more personable. And so instead of just calling it Tridio Productions, we just linked it to me as a person so that it would be a little bit more relatable. So it would get a face. That's basically it. And so since we then, you know, called the website, we turned that into Father Roderick. We made all the channels were called Father Roderick. We had this consistent branding in all these different channels. And so the YouTube channel for Tridio Media kind of fell by the wayside because it's just an umbrella organization, at least in its current functioning. And so that channel is still really really great. It has a lot of members. We've used it over the past year, I think, for some of our Lego videos. We've got these educational Lego videos, you know, where I explain Easter with the use of Lego. Those have been very popular. So that that has kept the channel alive. But then that was about it. I did like a behind the scenes. Originally, we thought, well, maybe we can do some behind the scenes stuff on that channel, but we never got around to doing that because it's all a bit too much effort for not much in terms of reach. And so now that we are refocusing our YouTube channels, we said, hey, we're going to bring that Mass for Geeks to the Trideo Media YouTube channel. So in case you want to follow that, you want to get notified when that Mass goes live every Sunday, make sure to look for Trideo Media on YouTube and to subscribe. And there's this bell icon, and if you click it, you'll be more likely to get notified when the channel goes live. It's not guaranteed because, YouTube is a bit weird sometimes, but it will heighten the chances. The second thing, what is that? There's this truck passing by there's a rotunda here, how do you call that? Wow, listen to that. That's a very loud car. I think even the microphone picked it up. So there is a busy road just outside the window. And normally I don't hear it that much, but well, tonight they're probably, I don't know, in the mood to make some noise. So the second thing that we're going to do is to bring these live podcasts to the Trideo Media channel. So both this podcast that you're currently listening to, whenever I can, I will stream that live and I will notify you on the Discord server if you're a patron or via my social media channels. And also the community hour. So that's the Friday afternoon podcast hour that I do together with my co-host Inge. And so those are 3 live streams that are going to move from my current YouTube channel to the Trideo Media channel. So that's the first announcement. Second announcement is I'm actually already in a process of reorganizing a couple of my YouTube channels. One of the things that I just said about listening to your audience and walking with them instead of just like, hey, I came up with this wonderful idea. Here, you're going to like it. Instead of doing that, which is kind of a little bit what I've been doing over time, I want to make it I want to make a new commitment that I want to deliver what people are actually looking for. And this is also where all the let's say the numbers behind the channels are so helpful. So Google and TikTok give you lots of statistics. So you can actually measure and track what people will consume, what will engage them, how long they will watch, what kind of topics are of interest, and what other topics are kind of left by the wayside. All that is extremely valuable information that as a content producer I can see, but the visitors of my channel, of course, not. And so one of the conclusions after studying this for a number of weeks and thinking about this was that it's very, very clear what my audiences are telling me to do. And it's different between the 2 channels. On TikTok, it is obviously very, very, very clearly an audience that wants me to do religious analysis of anime and manga. And it is so crystal clear. The proof is in the pudding. I put up a short TikTok video the other day about a trailer, like a new teaser trailer for the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings series that's going to be on Amazon Prime. And, oh wow, even more noise outside. Now this is an ambulance. This is not a good time to record a podcast. Quiet. Well, they probably have a reason to make noise. So they want me to do that. That video about the Rings of Power, and I love that. And people have been encouraging me, just share what you like, share what you love. But what if nobody really cares? Should I even put effort in that? Because, creating even a TikTok video of 2 minutes takes hours and hours of work. Well, just to give you an idea, that video now has about 6,000 views, which is nice, but it's nothing compared to the previous video, which was about this anime series. It was a comparison of a scene in that anime movie or whatever episode, and then the crucifixion, the iconography of the crucifixion in the Eastern Orthodox Church and in the Catholic Church. So that video now has more than 2 million views. Just let that sink in. 2 million views. It's insane. The last time I had so many views of a video was when I did my first video reaction to the trailer for The Force Awakens. And that was on a YouTube channel that is not even there anymore. So it's insane that for something as obscure as, an anime from the 1995 era, that there is such a worldwide global interest for, my kind of approach to that. So, and this has been very, very, how do you say that? Consistent. So whenever I look at the statistics of all these videos, every time I do anime, manga, it explodes. It goes viral, and people are like hundreds and hundreds of reactions per day. When I do something else, equally geeky to me, it gets a few thousand views. Some of them may go to like 10 or 12,000. Even if I do Star Wars, it's just not the audience that wants me to do that on that channel. And so I made a decision. It's so clear that this audience wants me to do anime and manga. That's what I'm going to do. There's so much material there that I can comment on, and it proves to be a very fertile ground for evangelization and for catechesis. So that's what I'm going to commit to. The YouTube channel is very different. We have similar tendencies there where the statistics are showing huge differences between the various types of content. It used to be just this place where I would do whatever I pleased. Well, turns out there is one category that everybody wants to see more of. And all the analysis, even oh wow, it's a second ambulance. Wow, I hope it's nothing. Usually there's an accident when they have two ambulances like that. Anyway, so this one topic that always never fails to trigger that audience on YouTube is Star Wars. People do click on the other stuff, but it's just a few percentage of the massive interest that there is for Star Wars. So again, the audience has spoken, and this is consistent over months. So it's clear what I had to do. I have to rearrange that channel and focus solely on Star Wars. But what about all the other stuff? Well, don't worry about that. I'm going to bring all the other geeky interests into this show. This has always been the place where I could just talk about anything. And that's part of what you as a podcast audience have always told me. Is like, we like the variety. We like the diversity. It just changes. You never know what you're going to get. It's this, that the dynamic of this podcast makes it so fun to listen to, because it's this whole slew of different topics. So the lack of focus is its main selling point. And so, but the consequence is that if I talk about, for instance, I've watched a movie and it's not Star Wars, hey, I can talk about it here. I can review it here. If I want to do an in-depth analysis, I can always do it on the Story Secrets show. If there's this one movie that I feel like I have to go in depth and talk spoilers, I can do that on the special Patreon podcast. But I don't have to do that here, nor do I have to, work very hard to create all sorts of videos about these topics and then put them on YouTube and then see that, it doesn't do anything. The people that are there for Star Wars. They want to hear this Star Wars priest. And actually, I know that community because I met a lot of its members at the Star Wars celebration in Anaheim, and hopefully next year in London, I will also meet them again. So for me, it was very liberating to go through this channel and create new playlists. And when you go through, this is like a channel that's been around for 3 years now, and I see just all the videos that I've put on that channel, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, no wonder it doesn't work. It's such an eclectic mix of stuff. And because every video takes so much time to make, none of the videos are really good. maybe good in contents, but definitely not good in execution. That's something I learned from TikTok, is the more your video is like top notch in production quality, the more traction it will get. So limiting my YouTube activity to Star Wars on this main channel is going to help me to invest more time and care to these videos so that they can reach much farther. That is my plan. And so I'd already moved the Lego to its own YouTube channel. So there's a Lego channel where I do live streams, and then every once in a while I'll do one of those catechesis videos. I will continue to do that, but that's just a channel for fun. And I've started to do Lego sessions again, and it's a ton of fun. It's just a very small crowd, but we always chat, and it's just for me a channel to hang out on, and I don't have to worry that much about. It's not actually even about the Lego per se. It's just the community thing and this ASMR sound of all the bricks that are making these clicking noises. It's a ton of fun. So that's my Lego channel. And then of course we've got the all the stuff that has to do with my travels. So that's more like the vlogging documentary type of stuff. I haven't made a decision on that, and maybe it's not just me that has to decide about that. But I'm thinking that maybe the best channel to put that on would also be either the Tridio Media channel or a specific channel that would focus on travel videos. I mean, even my videos from Poland, from World Youth Day, that is almost 10 years ago, they still get hundreds of hits every month. So there is a longevity of those travel videos, of that documentary style stuff, that is extremely long tail in its effect. So that is worth also investing in, but it has to be on its separate channel. And then the final announcement has to do with the title of this show. Now that I'm adding a new show, I gave it a title. It's called, Story Secrets with Father Roderick. I'm thinking there was this one podcast that used to be my only podcast, that and a walk. And that's this one that you're currently listening to. And it used to have a different name. And then for whatever reason, I stopped using that name. And I just, called it Father Roderick. But Father Roderick what? Everybody always, it's like, so what's the name of your show? It's Father Roderick. Yeah, that's your name. What's the name of the show? And I don't want to call it the Father Roderick Show because that sounds weird in my Dutch ears. It's not something we do over here in Europe. So I didn't want to call it like that. But what was wrong with the existing name? This show started in 2005. That's how old this show is, as The Daily Breakfast. And it was a daily show. And then when we turned that into a weekly show, I wanted to keep a little bit of that vibe of the breakfast, because it was actually something you could listen to while you were having your breakfast or a break. And then I was like, hey, that's a great name. We'll just call it The Break with Father Roderick. And you listen to it whenever you need a break. It can be when you're commuting, can be during your lunchtime, when you're walking the dog. This is the perfect stuff. It's not a course. It's not like a homily or a sermon. It's not, it's just entertainment with a little bit of, deeper layers to it. And so for many years, this show was called The Break. And then I think one of the reasons that we changed the name, or that we didn't call it The Break anymore, was that there was, I think, a TV show or a TV that was calling itself The Break. But that was very short-lived, and now that name is not in use anymore. And so for this second half of 2022, starting today, this show is going back to its original name. And it will be called, from now on till henceforth, The Break with Father Roderick. So we're going to make some changes to the artwork, but I hope you enjoy that. And to me, the title should cover what it is. And that's hopefully what it is. It's just an entertaining break. Speaking of entertainment, I've been going on way too long about all these changes. It is time to take a break.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like,
The guy gets the girl, and that kid sees dead people, and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. Now I'm gonna give it to you.
Today I want to talk about a television series that I've been watching for 3 years now, and the 4th season has been posted on Netflix recently in 2 parts. They started with the first 7 episodes, and then I think they posted another 2 episodes. And of course, I'm talking about Stranger Things. And one of the reasons that I love that show so much is that it takes place in the time of my youth. It is taking place in the 80s. That's when I was in high school. And so when I watch these stories, I recognize so much of like the hairstyles, the music, the world in which these characters live, and it's so well executed. And this was around the time that the American culture, the American popular culture, started to pervade also the European culture. And this was relatively new, and it was thanks to the media that were changing. We didn't have the internet yet, but we did have computers. Computer games were on the rise. There were more movies that would reach mainland Europe, and so a lot of the also the way in which people would dress, the music that they would listen to, became global. And so that's why I can always so relate so well to Stranger Things. Another thing that I love about Stranger Things is that it is about very relatable kids. Like all these different characters, and there's a whole ton of them, are very much like the kids in my class, the kids in high school. And it's not, like... I can point to certain past classmates and say, oh, that is this girl or that, but it's the same style and the same variety, and it's a show where a lot of the cast members are nerds. And there is a bit of that awkward age where, like 12, 13, 14, you start to grow up, you're kind of insecure about your identity. And the nerdy kids would get together and just be nerdy. And then you would have all the cool kids and the hip kids, and they would be good at sports. And the boys would always be popular with the girls and vice versa. And the nerds were always kind of at the side observing that. I was part of the nerd group, as you can imagine. And so this 4th season totally revives that, and it's an amazing story. Now, of course, it's not just about the 80s. It's also about monsters from this parallel world that is super dark and all these, devilish creatures taking over the real world. It's done super, super well. And so I've watched the first episode, and I'm committing myself to watching 1 episode for lunch every day. So I do watch a lot of television during lunchtime right now. I do that on purpose, because if I go and watch TV in the evening, I will go to bed too late, and I'd rather just, build Lego when I'm right before going to bed. It's better for my sleep rhythm. So, but that first episode was absolutely amazing. And you've got the club, the D&D club that the nerdy kids are a part of, and it's called something like the Devils. What was it again? I did some research on that because it sounded familiar. Let's see, where did I write that down? Oh yeah, it's called the Hellfire Club. And so the Hellfire Club is a group of D&D players, Dungeons and Dragons, which I've never played, but that is about to change. I'll get to that later. Where you do a campaign and you have to explore dungeons and you use the dice to defeat the monsters, or they defeat you. Now the thing is, the name of that club, the Hellfire Club, that refers to a real institution in Ireland and England in the 18th century. These were like gentlemen's clubs where also, rich women would be members of. And this was basically kind of high society clubs, very exclusive, where they would talk about poetry and art and culture and philosophy. But the name kind of gives it away. The Hellfire Clubs, these clubs were also sometimes dabbling in less savory behavior. And one of the things that they would often do, and apparently that was a thing at the time, was to mock religion. So they were so sophisticated, of course. So of course, they didn't believe in all that religious stuff, but they would still feel the need to parody it. And so they would often come together on Sundays dressed up as biblical characters, and they would perform these mock religious services. That is kind of borderline esoteric, right? And even though they would always say, well, it's just for fun, we're just messing with you. I still think that it's not by accident that this Dungeons and Dragons group of kids is named after that club. Because actually, it was not just one club. There were more of them in Ireland as well that were called Hellfire Clubs. But there is, of course, this kind of insidious connotation of like, there is something a bit like counter-religious in there. And then, according to the founder of the first Hellfire Club, the real president of the club was the devil himself, and the members would call themselves also devils. So you see that this is getting eerily close to what's happening in the fourth season of Stranger Things, where the whole idea is if you open the door just a crack to these devilish creatures, they will get in. And so even if it's just for fun, it's always a bit risky to play with the devil in a certain way, thinking that you can win. Before you know it, you could open the door to his influence. And that, of course, is not something you want to do. And Stranger Things gives a very visible, physical idea of what ultimately, of course, is a spiritual process where if you open your heart to sin, it will start to corrupt your heart. And it's like, your focus determines your reality. It's something Obi-Wan says to Anakin, and it's very true. If you focus on the negative, if you are always, even in the way you consume the news or the people you follow on social media, if you're opening the door to all this negativity or this harshness, is kind of the cruelty that sometimes people display in the way they fight their opponents. Even if you tell yourself, I'm just reading this, I'm just observing this, it will have an influence on you, and it may actually start to corrupt you yourself, and you start to behave in the same way. So, all these psychological things and the spiritual side of it's very close. Anyway, none of that is, of course, really a central theme in Stranger Things. However, I do believe that it has a strong metaphorical purpose. It is, like any good story, also a mirror for us, and literally the cracks in the walls that open to this other, the upside down, this dark world, are. These cracks are a metaphor of the cracks in our own hearts and minds, and maybe even in our society. The more violence there is, the more violence will generate violence. We see that with all the mass shootings in the United States, all that, all these these guns and military weapons. Even if you say, well, it's just because of our Second Amendment, and it's just part of our identity. Is it just something you can separate from behavior? A lot of people who cause these mass shootings show the opposite. And if it's available, it can be used for horrible things. Anyway, I'm glad in a way that Stranger Things is just about creepy monsters.
Catholics rock!
It's time for a short visit to the Peculiar Bunch, and this is where you can ask anything you always wanted to know about Catholics, but you were afraid to ask.
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
Today I want to talk about Captain Pike in Star Trek Strange New Worlds and the relation to a very important theological theme.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
So one of the most successful and definitely most appreciated new Star Trek series is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It was created as a spin-off of Star Trek Discovery because Star Trek Discovery in the early seasons are taking place around the time of the Enterprise. And so there is this crossover that happens. And then the crew of Discovery just travels forward in time. And so there's no overlap. And the few episodes that featured the Starship Enterprise with its original crew, this was before Captain Kirk took the helm, these few episodes were so popular with the fans that Paramount decided to create a full spin-off and to make it more episodic, more like the original Star Trek series. And that has proven to be a fantastic choice because everybody's raving about this series. It's the concept, it's also the actors, it's the vibe. It really feels like classic Star Trek. And I hope the popularity sends a strong signal to Paramount that is what the fans want. I hope they listen to their audiences instead of just saying, hey, no, we want Discovery. That you need to like Discovery. Well, I'm not sure if that works. So, but what I love about the story, so I've seen 2 episodes. There are 9 episodes, I think, now. And this is part of Paramount Plus, so it's not available everywhere. When I was in the United States, I was able to watch it. I think Paramount even has a channel with ads. Is that correct? Or was that Hulu? I don't remember. Anyway, so I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is already, right now, my favorite Star Trek series ever. I just love everything about it. And what I appreciate even more was that it starts with a very tormented captain. Pike, of course, one of the defining characteristics of his character is that he knows how he will die and when he will die. He has seen it. And so this is part of another story. He's got this vision and he knows 100% certain when he's going to die and how he's going to die. And he's haunted by that vision. And it's going to take place in about 10 years from the time where we're at in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And so the question, of course, is, what does that do to you if you know you're going to die? Initially, he resigns. He's no longer in space. And the beginning of the first episode sees him getting a call to action. It's like, you have to come back because your former number 1 is missing and we need you at the helm. And then he initially refuses. And of course, he's got the kind of the beard, very much a trope. Like he lives in a very cold environment and a very rugged life, and he doesn't want to go back into space. But of course, there wouldn't be a series if he wouldn't change his mind. So he does accept the call, and then he calls Spock, who is the opposite of him. And Spock is immediately, even though he just got engaged, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. It's the most logical thing to do. And that's how that adventure gets started. And what I like about the first 2 episodes is that you see how Pike struggles with the idea of his imminent death and the question if it truly matters what he does and if this is what he should do with his life. If he's going to die anyway, what good does it do? And it's this idea of determinism versus free will. If you know that it's your fate, your destiny to die, and you know the time and the place, what room is there for free will? Can history take another course? no matter how well I will behave and how moral the choices will be that I make, I'm still going to die. So that's a very interesting theological question. You can relate this to the big question of, if God is outside of time, if God is eternal, he knows not just the past, but also the present and the future. God already knows past, present, and future. But if God knows the future, how can we have free will? How can it still matter what we do? Why doesn't he act? If he sees that things are going wrong and he knows, for instance, that there's going to be this major catastrophe, why doesn't he just interfere and make sure it doesn't happen, or save the people before the disaster strikes? It's a huge question that many people, also Christians, struggle with. And it's ultimately also a question that becomes very personal. If God already knows how my life is going to end, does it really matter what I do? And if you push that too far, you get this kind of like some currents in Protestantism that are very deterministic, where the idea is God decides and already knows, and it is already predetermined whether you will go to hell or to heaven. And whatever you do, it doesn't matter. God already knows. It's already, in the books. And so, if I understand it correctly, if you are successful, if you're doing good, then that's a clear sign that you'll probably go to heaven. But you can still mess it up if you do evil things, if you sin, if you follow the vices in life instead of the ideals and the virtues, then you'll probably go to hell, just as God has already foreseen. So it's very suffocating to think about it like that. And in Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, that is definitely a big struggle for Captain Pike, much bigger struggle than the occasional alien that he has to beat up. And so in the second episode, they encounter this asteroid, and it turns out the asteroid is followed by a spaceship that is protecting the asteroid, because the aliens on that spaceship say, well, it's not an asteroid, it's a divine being, and it knows the future. So whatever you do, it has already thought of that. And so whatever it does, the problem is it's going to crash into a planet with millions or billions of people on it. And so Captain Pike is like, yeah, we need to interfere. But then the aliens are like, no. If the asteroid wants to crash into that planet, that's the plan. We need to respect that. We cannot interfere. And Pike, of course, like any good Star Trek captain, is like, yeah, what? I'm not going to obey to those rules. No, I'm going to try to do what I can, save this planet, and see if I can talk in one way or another to this alien asteroid, and see if I can change its course or its mind. And what I love about it is that in the end, you still don't know if the ending came about through the interference of Captain Pike in the Enterprise, or whether that was the plan all along. But what does matter to Pike, and that's the big lesson that he learns, is that he needed to act. It was imperative that he did something. It was the moral thing to do. And it was almost like resisting this determinism where you don't care anymore because whatever happens is going to happen. And he feels like, no, I have done something. And maybe I was supposed to do that. Maybe that was also part of the plan. But if I hadn't done it, it would have resulted in this massive catastrophe where billions of people on that planet had died. So who cares if the future is already known? What matters is that I follow my conscience that tells me I need to act now. And so your guide in this earthly life is your conscience. That will steer you, that will tell you what to do. And if God gave us a conscience, then he means that it matters what we do. Otherwise, he could have just told us, you do whatever you want. But he gave us a conscience to whisper in our ear, to tell us the truth, to to impact our choices. We can, of course, choose to ignore that conscience and do the opposite of what is good. But then we're heading to our own destruction. And so the fact that God gave us his conscience is a great gift, and that if we listen to it, we will, in fact, improve our life and also the lives of the people around us. That in itself tells me that it's okay, that God knows the future, but still wants me to be here and to play my role and to make the right choices. And so the episode ends with Pike kind of being strengthened again. It's like, yeah, okay, I know that I'm going to die, but it will not stop me from doing the right thing. It will not stop me from being a captain for this crew that needs me and doing the right thing whenever I can. That, for me, was one of the major reasons that I love the start of this new season. I can't wait where the writers will go next.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
I am so stoked about this new audiobook that I'm listening to. And it just came out. Normally I don't buy new books because it's expensive. I always wait for the sales on the Amazon page. And I have this subscription to this, I think it's a Swedish or Danish company, where I can listen to thousands of audiobooks for free. Well, for free. I pay a monthly fee, but it's $11. And I listen to maybe 10 or more books every month. So it's definitely worth the price of admission. The downside is it doesn't have access to all the audiobooks out there, and there are certain publishers that don't work with Storytel, like Penguin, like some American publishers, and unfortunately also all the publishers that publish Star Wars stuff. It's not available on Storytel. They used to have it, but then they pulled it from the catalog. And so this new book came out that I heard everybody rave about. It's called Shadow of the Sith. And it's a story, and that's why I wanted to read it. It's a story about the origins of Rey, about her parents. And you know that the father of Rey was a son of Palpatine. What is that story? We don't get to know it. And so, you know, the Rise of Skywalker feels like it's missing essential information, and does things plot-wise that are not warranted because they've never been set up. And, you know, that explains a lot of the criticism on that movie. But this is Star Wars, and Star Wars is not just movies. And what I love so much about Star Wars is that they continue to fill in the gaps. They did that with Obi-Wan Kenobi. They did it with Boba Fett. And they do it with the comics. And so in this novel, we finally get to hear the backstory of Rey's parents and how she ended up on that planet. And there's going to be Luke and Lando Calrissian also involved in some kind of interstellar race. It sounds so incredibly cool. And so I got the audiobook, and I got it for free. Not because it's available for free, and not because I downloaded it illegally. No, it's because I have, thanks to my Android phone, I have Google Play Store points. So whenever you make a purchase on the Google Play Store, you get points, and those add up. And you can, if you get to 100 points, that's worth €1. So over time, last year I bought a lot of the Wheel of Time books, so that gave me a ton of points. And there was also another app, or it is an app, that gives you these surveys. It's also by Google, and it's usually about supermarket stuff, you know, so did you visit this or this store? And yeah, so you do these inquiries, mostly twice a week. And it's very simple stuff, and it's always the same because I always go to the same stores and I buy the same stuff. So I don't know exactly how that can be of use to Google, but anyway, they give you credit also. So I saved up like $15 or $16 of credit plus Google points, and the book itself is currently on sale on the Google Play Store for I think I paid €15 or $14.99 for the Penguin. It's the British version. There was also an American version, exactly the same, and it cost $20. So anyway, I started listening to it, and I am so happy that I got the audiobook because it is amazing. Not only is it a very good reader, but it's got all the music, it's got sound effects, it's like listening to an audio play. I see the movie in my head, and it's such a fun story. The first 2 chapters are already blowing me away. And this is a 17-hour audiobook. So it's not a small book. It's not a simple story. And again, the reviews are raving, and they all say the same. It's like this is extraordinarily good. This may be one of the best Star Wars novels written so far in the new canon. So I'm contemplating doing a community read of this book, and maybe do that on my YouTube channel. Do like these live sessions after I've read 10 chapters, and then just talk about the evolution of that. If that's something that you'd be interested in, or you may even want to join me on a chat about the book, let me know. On Discord, we have a book section, or you can also reach me through other social media channels. If you're already reading this book, or you're planning to, and you'd like to talk about it every once in a while to discuss the story, then let me know. I think it would be a lot of fun to have, a Star Wars book club.
The scientifically wonderful world of science.
What sort of science?
Welcome back, science friends.
Speaking of space, the final frontier, the James Webb telescope is finally ready for action, and much earlier than anyone expected. It took them 6 months to completely unfold the telescope and to calibrate it. And there were some setbacks, like one of the mirrors, because the thing consists of a lot of different mirrors that have to all point in a certain direction to amass all that visual information and infrared information. One of the mirrors got struck by a micro meteorite. And that's always the big risk in space. There are a number of movies that show you what happens if your spaceship gets perforated even by a tiny little pebble. The speed with which these tiny little, pieces of debris are racing through space is sometimes incredible. And so the impact is going to cause major damage. And so one of those mirrors got misaligned through that tiny little micro meteorite, and they had to adapt it. And they were able to make it work. So they just adjusted it a little bit to compensate for the damage that was done. And now it's perfectly aligned, ready to take its first photographs. And I cannot wait to see what they are going to show us, because we're going to be looking at the beginning of time, or at least the earliest phases of the universe as we know it. May not be the beginning of time, but definitely we're going to the earliest moments of the Big Bang. And that in itself is just insanely interesting. So I'll keep you informed on this podcast. But man, these are great times to live in.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device, and it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build,
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who has a lot of old devices lying around, like an old phone or an old tablet that you bought years ago, and then at one point they stopped providing you with the security updates, and then you didn't want to sell it because it's an old thing. You couldn't find anyone to give it to, and so it's just in one of your closets or in a drawer. I have a number of those devices, and even though I've done my best to declutter as much as possible, some of these devices still kind of work, kind of. One of them is my old iPhone 6. You cannot upgrade it anymore, but it still has a functioning camera, which is actually pretty good. The camera in the back. I filmed an entire 3-part documentary with that phone. The battery is still pretty good. It's actually lasting an entire day, which is surprising for such an old phone. And it still kind of feels like an iPhone. But the apps, a lot of the apps are no longer usable, at least not the latest apps. And some of the apps require the newest version to function. So I can't run every app on it, but I do use it as a device for the teleprompter that I have. So it's a little mirror, like a slanted mirror in front of the camera, and whenever I have to look at the camera and just tell a whole story without hesitating, I project the text that I want to record onto the iPhone. That is reflected in a mirror, and the camera shoots through the mirror. So that's a great use for that particular iPhone. And then I have my old iPad, the iPad Air, the first iPad Air, and it's got a pretty small screen, but it still works. And again, battery power is pretty amazing, but old. And the difference between the iPhone and the iPad was getting really slow, especially when I was typing. Like you would type on the screen, and then you would hear the sounds like tick, 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 but nothing would appear. And then all of a sudden, it would type the entire phrase. And also just closing and opening apps, it was just so incredibly slow. And I often still use that iPad as a replacement for my newer iPad when that one is charging. So I use my iPad all the time. And so oftentimes I have to recharge it during the day, or I've forgotten to recharge it during the night. So, and then I use the old iPad to be able to browse or to send off an email or check my TikTok feed and stuff. But it became so slow. So today I spent my lunch looking at all sorts of sites and videos on how to improve the speed. And there were a ton of things that I could do. A lot of functionality that Apple has been adding over the years, long after they launched this iPad Air, was so resource heavy that it slowed down the whole thing, especially Siri. Because Siri is not just a personal assistant, but it's also a built-in search, and it searches everything continuously, so that whenever you ask Siri to do something or find something, she can find it. But I never use Siri because it's just not very good, at least not compared to the Google assistant that I'm using. And so I turned that off, and that was immediately noticeable. That really improved everything. I turned off all the visual effects, like the animations to open or to close a program. I turned off all the spellings correction, the automatic guesses on whenever you type something in Google. It starts to search already. All these tiny little things. I did about 10 or 15 things, and I turned it all off, and then now it's just as fast as it was when I first bought it. It's insane. It's all software. So the actual device is still just as fast as it was. It was just all this newer software that I didn't use anyway when I bought the thing. And I still really don't care for it because, if I want to do more advanced stuff, I will use my current phone and my current iPad. But I'm so glad that I can use it again. So just wanted to pass that on. If you have a very slow iPad or other device, just Google how to make it faster, and a lot of those tricks really work and really make a difference. And with that, we've come to the end of this show, the first new episode of The Break with Father Roderick. Thank you so much for listening, and if you're a patron, I hope to get some of your input about these changes on the Discord server. And if you have anything else that you want us to do or to think about, let us know. You know how to find us. And that's a wrap. How's everybody doing in the chat? I hope that people were able to find us, because this is, of course, not the usual streaming location. All righty. It's getting warm in this room. Let's see. Who is there? Margot. Hey, Thomas. Good to see you. Tony is there too. I have a similar dilemma when I write my freelance articles. Sometimes I put a lot of effort into stuff that no one reads. Yeah, it's always I guess it's our lot in life. At least you get paid for it. I don't get paid. If no one watches my videos, there is no ad revenue. It's just a waste of time. And oftentimes, like a video will take me an entire day, and then nobody watches it. It's like I've spent an entire day working for free. That's not fun. Jim is there too. Imagine 2 million views, a tribute to Christ's sacrifice and the work of you and in reinterpreting this for us. It's been amazing to see the changes in SQPN and Tridio. I agree, Jim. We've come a long way. I always think back of those early years, but we continue to learn and we get better as we grow, as we try. This is all very interesting, Father Roderick. I'm going to have to consider doing this kind of audience research for my own content. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. The more the more you know for who you write, the more the audience will find you. Thomas used to listen to the break on my break at one of my old jobs. Yeah. I still think it's a good concept. It's just a break. It's not pretentious. But anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. And I also hope that our mass community can find us next Sunday. We'll make sure to spread the link via social media a little bit early. But I believe that this is the right thing to do. And what I also like is that we had all these different YouTube channels that we've created over time. And it's difficult to focus on channels that have no audience or no specific purpose. And I feel that with this rearrangement of the content, it makes sense again. And I still create a lot of content to fill these channels without it costing extra. But I'm mostly relieved also. Like now that my main YouTube channel is just Star Wars, I feel like, phew. So I don't have to make a video after every single TV show that I've watched. I could just chat about it on the podcast, and that's fun. That's just what I would do if I were with friends, But that's very different in terms of energy than creating videos about everything, because then you have to formulate an opinion. You want to add value. And so I would do research. Like yesterday, I wrote scripts for lots of YouTube videos, not even about Star Wars, but just about, the thing that I talked about for Star Trek and Stranger Things. That information came from a script that I wrote yesterday. So I was looking at Wikipedia. That took like 4 hours to write that stuff. And then I finished the scripts. And I was looking at that channel and I'm thinking, but who is going to watch this? Nobody cares. Nobody follows me because I have an opinion on Star Trek. There are many other real Star Trek fans that are doing a much better job. So why bother? People want Star Wars and religion. People want anime and religion. Let's give them that. And you want podcasts and just like something to entertain you during your break. I'm here to serve. The break is back. All right, I'm going to take a break myself. It's time to go to bed. Wow, this white on gray is hard to read. Listen to the Force. Thank you for the advice. I will. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification. See you later.